Going on to Natarajan next. So we sent around a few questions, and Nat responded back with an interest in 10 questions. So I think that's typical IIT Madras style, right? He said, "Yeah, just bring it all. I'll take it all up." Right? I think we'll have a separate panel discussion only with Nat. We'll do it later, Nat. But please humor me. I'm going to take a few questions and bring it up to you, particularly around operational challenges and solutions, because you also, if I recall, in our quick call that we had, you did mention this, about this. So, what are some of the biggest operational challenges when expanding into the U.S. Markets, U.S. sectors? Of course, we did hear from Chandu and Gopi and Chandran about the credibility, and Krishna spoke about how you have misconceptions about the whole thing. But if you can take on more in terms of, let's say, just the hard grind, everyday execution, talent, people. What works here, not so much the culture, but the strategy part of it, the operational models part of it, the financial models that go along here. Because we're really talking in the context of scale-ups that are already fairly further along the way, going overseas. So in that very specific context, if you can shed some light on operational challenges. And also while you do that, if you can talk a little bit about how can startups build a strong local R&D presence, and this is pretty much down your alley, so it's a very important question. So with a very strong local R&D presence like Zyma, for instance, who are right here in the audience today, and manage cross-border technology transfer effectively. So operational challenges, sure. And how do you take local R&D to global markets?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I was eager when looking at the list of questions. I think these are all things that we live every day. I thought I want to take a stab at everything, but I think they're all significant overlap in the questions as well. So I think I echo everything that my esteemed panelists talked about. I think going to a new market, or even forget US, even within India, right? You have different customer segments. You don't take one product and push it down across all customer segments. It starts with that mindset and mentality. And I remember the times when I went from US to Canada to take a financial product, right? And US thinks of Canada as the 51st state. It doesn't work that way, right? I mean, so there are very, very strong sensitivities that people have across the borders, across the states. And US, when in India we talk about it, India is not one India, right? Every 100 kilometers we talk about water being different, clothing being different, food being different. US in some ways there are sensitivities as well between Midwest and Northeast and West Coast. They're almost different countries. So I think you'll have to really understand and embrace that and say, who are you talking to? The same product will succeed, but you have to position it differently. You have to see who you're talking to, right? When in Target, I used to work for Target, and we used to focus at upper class mom, soccer mom, right? That was what Target is for. When a lady who enjoys a shopping experience, you want to come to a shop that's well ventilated, well lit, you got space to move around, not a Walmart, right? I mean, Walmart caters to a different customer. We're low cost, and that's the best that they can offer. So it's really important as a startup who's looking to go to US, and for that matter, anybody, to really think about positioning. What is it that you have, and who are you pitching it to, right? Take your product market fit India hypothesis, put it back in the US context, and say, how does it play there? Do you have to make fundamental differences? It could be the same product, mind you. It could be just the narrative around it, or sometimes changes as well. I think, again, they talked about, in the US, convenience is very important, right? Form is as important as function. So think about, it's not just getting a working product going. Convenience is valued. Like you said, it's not about pricing. It's about, is it reliable? Is it predictable? And once you lose the trust, you lose them forever, right? It's very difficult to get a second chance. So, be mindful of it from day one. Prepare for global. That's a great statement. So while in India, you need to do all kind of jugaad to get it to working, and I think you should do that. It's not like you'll have to overinvest with everything being perfect to work here, but you always have to know, if I'm scaling up and going to a different market, what is the best way to scale, right? You can't go with jugaad when you scale up. You need to have predictable methodology, frameworks, all that working. So you have to have a view towards what the scaling up looks like and be able to demonstrate that to the US customer. The biggest thing that we have when we set up GCCs is, we initially talked about cost arbitrage. Why do you come to India or Mexico? 1/5 of the cost or 1/10 of the cost. But I think when over the period of time, you figure out that the quality is not the same. What could be done by 2-3 people there, you require 14 people here. Because we don't have access to the markets, right? You don't have the context. You're sitting far away, trying to guess what the consumer wants there, right? So as you set up a center there, you'll need to really invest in understanding the customer context. What is it that they value? What do they care about? And really, when you think about operational challenges, it's important to set up an office there, right? I mean, you have to demonstrate intent. You need to demonstrate investment there as well. Bring in your local sales guy. Again, some of these are stereotypical. I remember working for a company called EMC who are into storage, right? It's a great product. You don't need a sales team to sell it. People will come and buy it for you. They used to recruit NFL stars to, be the salespeople, right? They don't know anything in technology, but they have a presence because product will sell itself. You just need a personality to take it to the market. So you really have to understand what sells there and who you're selling it to, right? When you can talk their language, you can associate with emotions, it sells. So you have to bring in a local sales force to connect with the customer, and that becomes easy, right? The third thing is operational challenges. Every state has different regulations. I mean, California on the one hand has extreme regulations in terms of what they let you do there, right? From emissions onwards to discriminatory laws and equal opportunities, whatnot. So you'll have to be extremely careful, even in interview questions, right? As a HR person recruiting for a startup there, you got to be careful how you interview, what questions you're allowed to ask and what you're not supposed to ask, right? So strong lessons on those are important. And the legal enforcement is humongous there, right? You can't get away. I mean, you'll have to be very careful about your policies, your rules, and they're very enforceable. So you'll have to be very careful about some of these things, including IP and infringement and so on. We sometimes get away a bit too easy in India, right? So that, again, a huge operational challenge. Be clear about which province you operate in. Tax structures are very different, whether you're in Delaware or Wyoming, right? Some of them are very easy to set up. They provide legal provisions. Some of them are very easy on taxes when you're in Florida or Texas. So I think there are lots of things that you would go through to make the decision on where you will set up your office and how you're going about setting up office infrastructure and people practices and so on. I can go on. I mean, there's so many things around, pricing and positioning and so on and so forth. But I'll stop there for the first.
But Nat, if you can sort of speak about the second question, which is related to. Yeah. So the question is strong local R&D presence,
sure,
while managing cross-border technology transfer. Yeah. If you can shed some light.
Absolutely. I think even without the cross-border, I think I encourage our companies. In fact, one of the big focus areas for me is to bring in more MSMEs to IIT Madras Research Park, right? We have a very meager spend on R&D when you look at India, right? Sub 0.5% is what we spend on R&D, and that is a Achilles heel for us. The reason we are not a product nation, why we don't do invent or innovate as much as in Israel or other countries, we just don't invest enough in it, right? We are doing other things in terms of minor innovation. So huge focus on R&D, and I think particularly deep tech space is ripe with possibilities to do such things, right? We need to crack the hard problems, the science and engineering problems to bring about significant structural change in how we think about product and how that could scale. I know there was a question about product versus service. We'll take that for another day. But these are things that will give you recurring revenues, right? If you get a product right, the licensing that you get out of it, the bundling that you could do with that, and so on. So it's very important the young entrepreneurs of today seriously think about what changes are you making, how are you inculcating them in your product, both for India and for abroad. And the R&D expertise that you built into your product is your passport to US or European markets, right? I mean, the Indian talent is very well known, right? We've clearly established ourselves. There are significantly towering leaders of global companies who are of Indian descent, right? Indian education and so on. So we have the talent. I think the rest of the ecosystem is catching up to the talent in terms of, be it the resource pool around it, the infrastructure, the lab, and the boldness with which to dream about things and go to market and go for US and places like Falcon X programs and so on. So I think the fact that you're coming with credentials in R&D is an important focus. You've done your things right. You tested your product. You validated it. There is significant science behind it, and you engineered it for India, which means India is a very diverse market. And if you've done it here, there's a very good chance you'll work elsewhere as well, right? So I think that's a language that we're increasingly talking about. So demonstrating strong R&D, a few patents under your belt, if that's relevant for you, adds to your credibility for sure, because they know about the Indian system, Indian engineers, and when you go to the US market with these kind of credentials, you just have an easier time to build a credible story.
Wonderful, thank you. It feels like the panelists are just warming up, but we have to wrap up. It's already time. But if I can just sum it up, Murali, I'll just put it in very simple terms. I think what I've managed to do is to bring a whole host of challenges and problems with Indian startups and scale-ups going to the US, and I have a simple answer for that: Falcon X GIP. So I think the sales pitch is done. So with that, I'll have to, only left to thank the panelists for their time. I think I'm delighted and privileged to be in the company of probably 150 person years of collective experience in running companies, running away from companies, running away from countries, taking businesses global, investing in companies locally, globally. I think there is a tremendous powerhouse intellect sitting in this audience. All of them are very accessible. They're all very much in the Chennai ecosystem. They all go through the same traffic signals that we all do. So they're all right here, very accessible. So I'll encourage all of you to get in touch with these influencers, these thought leaders, and to take their support and guidance in the way forward. Thank you so much, panelists. It was a pleasure having you on board. Thank you.